Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me once again as we continue, we've barely begun, our journey through the story of St. Francis of Assisi. As I promised last week, I'm going to be talking about Assisi today. A couple observations. First, one of my viewers had asked me to recommend a biography of St. Francis. I haven't forgotten that. In fact, I've been doing some research for you because there are so many, and I want to make sure that I give you one that's respectable. I'm going to be reading from a renowned one today, perhaps just a little poetic, not meant to be historical, but you can judge for yourself. And then someone else encouraged me to not read so much from my notes. Well, I'm going to be reading a lot today from sources, but also from my notes because I'm talking about a place and geography. This isn't my fort, so I need to read some, but I do my best to be with you. We're united in the Spirit of the Lord for sure, and of his servant, St. Francis. Assisi and Francis are linked. Someone noted that no other city or town is so closely associated with a saint. Try to think of one. I thought of Teresa of Calcutta. Do we refer to her as Teresa of Calcutta? Then I thought, well, Anthony of Padua, who was a disciple of Francis, I guess, well, there's really only, don't want to say there's only one St. Anthony for us Franciscans. There is Anthony of Padua, but be that as it may, we always say Francis of Assisi. I recall when our new Holy Father was elected and it was announced that he chose the name Francis. What went through my mind was, he's probably being named after Francis Xavier, because Francis Xavier was Jesuit and Pope Francis is Jesuit, but no, he said he was being named after Francis of Assisi. I've had the blessing to travel to Assisi several times, however, for meetings primarily, so not as a pilgrim, unfortunately, not capturing its full spirit. Assisi is such that one has to go there as a pilgrim to fully drink in its beauty, its spirit, its charm. It's become a tourist destiny, and so it's hardly pristine as it was in Francis' day. My Franciscan brother, Father Murray Bodo, in his collection of poetry, Icarus in Assisi, has a short poem entitled Directions for Pilgrims that captures that spirit. Both spirits. As you enter Assisi, beware. Danger lurks on Mount Subasio. Vipers coil where laurel and ginestra grow. You're an intruder from a time imagined, not here where beer bottle nudges jonquil and St. Francis lives in souvenirs. But be consoled, your Francis, your Clare still dwell here in those who hobble and hunger, who draw from wounds a hymn. I know I'll be reading more of Father Murray's poetry in the course of this series. You heard the name Clare mentioned, your Francis, your Clare. I'll be talking about St. Clare as well, and it is Clare of Assisi, who was among Francis's earliest disciples. But we don't say Clare of Assisi as much as we say Francis of Assisi. In spite, though, of Assisi's being tainted, the spirit of Francis pervades the place, and many who go return again and again. The commercialization, the souvenirs don't ruin the spirit, as at some shrines they do. St. John the Baptist Province, the province of which I'm a member, allows us friars to nominate colleagues in our ministries to participate in a 2-week pilgrimage program to Assisi, to learn the Franciscan charism so that they can bring back inspiration and incorporate it into their ministries. I nominated early on in my tenure here at St. Clement, our principal, Jeff Iser. Jeff went on this pilgrimage. He took his wife, Rosie, with him. They were awestruck. They actually returned 2 more times so that they could drink in the Spirit more, so they could sit in the holy places and drink in the Spirit of our Father Francis and be led to Jesus through St. Francis, because Francis always leads one to Jesus. Our principal, Jeff, brought that Franciscan charism back, and I believe it permeates St. Clement's School. Assisi is in central Umbria, which is a region in central Italy. Umbria has been called Italy's green heart. It's green, mainly agricultural, more sparsely populated than its western neighbor, Tuscany. Umbria has no access to the Mediterranean. However, it is home to one of the largest lakes of Italy, Lake Trasimeno. Assisi is situated on the slope of Mount Subasio. You have before you a painting that someone did that I very much enjoy because it's so colorful and it captures the spirit. It's not a literal painting. It's not a photograph of Assisi, but you can see that it clearly is part of a hill. And you can see its agricultural neighbor, those beautiful, beautiful goldenrods. Because of its height, Mount Subasio, Assisi was of great strategic importance in the Middle Ages for control of roads from north to south. Here is what Paul and Joan Allen write in their work on Francis' Canticle of the Creatures. I quote, "As one approaches Assisi, crossing the Umbrian plain from the west, particularly at the hour of sunset, the town appears as a dreamlike mirage, resting on the spur of the western slopes of Mount Subasio. An almost magical grouping of houses, towers, churches, spires, walls, gateways, all of them made from a local stone of rosy pink hue and roofed with terracotta tiles in the local tradition, appear together in a harmonious oneness in the light of the setting of the sun." You capture some of that feel from this painting that you're looking at. The words dreamlike and magical are perfect descriptions. Gerard Straub, in his masterful book, The Sun and Moon over Assisi, a rather large book, filled with meditation and biography or autobiography, as well as the story of Francis and Clare. He continues to wax poetic. Allow me to read. Rome is known as the eternal city, but Assisi feels like an eternal shrine, honoring not only Francis and Clare, but also the mirror of their love, Christ. Christ, through Francis and Clare, hovers over this enchanted, saintly city. Its twisting, climbing streets seem to lead straight to heaven. Grace and hope are in the air. Assisi soothes the soul and stirs the spirit. God's smile can be seen even on a cloudy day. It's pretty eloquent. He goes on. In Assisi, there is a synthesis between poetry and prayer, between sanctity and song, between asceticism and aestheticism. Straub says, Assisi taught me that simplicity, serenity, sincerity, silence, and song are the heart of the Franciscan spirit. You repeat those. Simplicity, serenity, silence, and song, the heart of the Franciscan spirit. Assisi is an eternal shrine in which Francis's candle still burns brightly. Wow. And if I may, one final quote from Murray Bodo's classic work, The Journey and the Dream. And this is truly a classic. Just a couple years ago, it had its 40th anniversary celebration. But in his introduction, here's what Father Murray writes. Even today, as you walk through the Umbrian countryside, the peace of St. Francis seeps into your soul, and you begin to believe again that perfect joy is possible, even for modern men and women on the same terms that Francis won it. It's Father Murray writing. But things weren't all bliss and happiness in Assisi in Francis' time, the central Middle Ages, the late 12th and early 13th centuries. Straub also notes that Assisi's past was blood-soaked and war-torn. The Roman Empire had declined. People were clustering in towns like Assisi, which, with the developments in agriculture and greater political stability, towns like Assisi became economic and cultural forces, taking advantage of the rebirth of long-distance trade. We'll see that St. Francis's father got caught up in that. And yet, the contrast between town and country life was great. Town walls took on great practical importance. For those within the walls, life was extremely constricting, according to Franciscan historian Father Dominic Monti. He writes, in the village, virtually everyone, except for the lord of the manor, was at the subsistence level initially. A system of cooperative labor meant everyone rose and fell together in times of plenty and times of famine. At the same time, the new profit economy led to unbridled competition, pitting people against one another. Sharp gulfs in income quickly emerged. Merchants, bankers, professionals could amass considerable wealth, whereas typical day laborers, putting in 16-hour days, working in wretched conditions, barely survived. Records of the day, Monty writes, show great polarization between indigents depending on alms, others owning no property who lived on what they earned day by day, and the wealthier merchants and nobility. They even positioned themselves in the village that way. The wealthiest on the top tier of the hill, as it were. Remember, as you can see, Assisi was basically on a hill. St. Clair and her family were in that top tier. I remember hearing when we studied Franciscan history in the novitiate that they used to, the folks who lived up there, just drop their garbage into a drain and it drained down below to the people down below. The next tier down was more middle class. That's where Francis and his mother and father lived. And then you had on the bottom the poor. But don't forget, there's more. Francis ministered among the lepers. They were outside the city walls. And there was great civil strife in northern and southern Italy. Historically, under the Holy Roman Emperor in far-off Germany, ruling through local vassals. In Francis' time, the popes asserted liberty for the church to remove themselves out from under the emperor. Medieval popes said that the best guarantee of spiritual freedom was political freedom, and the popes became political. They worked to establish rule over a large part of central Italy, so they were in conflict with the emperor. Local bishops were in a quandary. Do they support the Pope, or do they support the emperor? That would be a no-brainer today, but not so in Francis's time. Commoners even started to take charge. So the signs of Francis' time in this idyllic city or village were greed and quest for power, which tended to divide people. Many people turned to their faith for guidance, but things were confusing there also and not very satisfying. Monty notes, there, quote, was an immense religious hunger. They were searching for a word from God, end quote. And he writes, Assisi, the birthplace of the Franciscan movement, was a microcosm of all these trends. And dear friends, it is in Assisi that we meet Pietro di Bernardoni and Lady Pica and their son Francis. Francis, who was born while his father was away at a cloth fair in France. And when Francis was born, while he was gone, his mother named him John. But his father wanted nothing to do with that. He wanted to show his connections with the world stage, so named him Francis. And already, seeds were sown. We'll meet Pietro and Lady Pica and young Francis in our next time together. Have a beautiful week. And thank you.